Okay, guys, here we are, chapter 26. This is the last chapter of Chomp, and then there is an epilogue. So this will be both chapter 26 and the epilogue. It's not even a full moon, Tuna pointed out. Derek Badger shrugged. What can I say? He had no future as a vampire. Jared Gordon's blood had tasted awful. Wahoo reached out and shook Derek's hand. That was huge. Thanks. No worries. Derek didn't know what in the world had come over him. It wasn't in his nature to risk his life for others. Attacking the gunman seemed more like something Dax Mangold would have done in the movies. Incredible, Tuna agreed. We should get your saliva tested. Yours too, Lance. They could hear the rescue boats racing through the sawgrass prairie toward the island. Overhead, the helicopter circled, the pilot expertly keeping the search beam trained on them to mark their location. With Tuna standing guard, Wahoo had bound Jared Gordon's wrists and ankles with a nylon rope from the airboat. Link himself had helped secure the knots, which would later have to be cut with a fish knife. The bite wounds on Jared Gordon's neck were painful, but not life-threatening, due to Derek's lack of proper fangs. Still, he'd clamped onto Tuna's father with enough force that it had required all of Wahoo's strength to pry him off. One cheek in the dirt, Jared Gordon glowered up at the man who'd flattened him. You sure don't look the same as on TV. Pipe down, mate, said Derek. You got owned. Wahoo's jaw was throbbing as if he'd been slugged by Mike Tyson. Before dousing the campfire, he relit the torch that he'd made from his expedition survival jacket. Then he returned to the airboat and sat down beside his father, who was still lying on the deck. I'm proud of you, Mickey told him. I didn't do anything. Tell that to Link. You saved the man's life. I didn't save you from getting shot, Wahoo said. Hey, I asked for it, Mickey winked. Alice got me, okay? What? Mom asked how come I'm limping? It's 'cause Alice chomped me. Weak, Wahoo said. Yeah, isn't that what happened to your thumb? Okay, Pop, we'll give it a try. Link was upright again, his breathing shallower than before. It hurt to talk, so he didn't. He was so elated to see his beloved airboat that he wasn't worrying about the bullet in his body. Derek asked, What are you people going to tell the police? The truth, Wahoo replied. Everything? He wants us to leave out the Nightwing stuff, Tuna said. Right, Mr. Badger? He nodded uneasily. Please? Okay, but only if you sign my coat. She fished through her bag and took out a black Sharpie. Derek looked dubious. You want my autograph? Tuna said, You're the first real TV star I've ever met. Plus, you did a seriously brave thing tonight. Twisted, but brave. Bull, her father blurted. That maniac tried to drown me. Hush up, Daddy. She pulled off one of Jared Gordon's moldy, wet socks and crammed it into his mouth. Then she handed the Sharpie to Derek. The name's Tuna, she said, like the fish. With a flourish, he wrote on her coat sleeve, To my friend Tuna, a true survivor. Your fan, Derek Badger. She was still beaming when the first rescue boat arrived. With no small effort, the driver and the police officer lifted Link off the ground and laid him on one of the bench seats. Next, they loaded Mickey Kray. Wahoo gave the torch to Tuna and climbed in beside his father. These two need a doctor, said the driver, who wore a frogger's lamp on his head. We gotta go. Wahoo waved his thumbless hand. Later, Lucille. Tuna laughed and wiggled 4 fingers in return. After the boat sped away, she gave her father's pistol to the police officer, who'd stayed behind to read Jared Gordon his legal rights and officially place him under arrest. Meanwhile, Derek Badger was basking in his heroic moment. Say, mate, would you happen to know if that chopper's equipped with a video camera? The cop said he wasn't sure. You're the beaver guy from cable, right? My kids watch your show every week. It's Badger, Derek said tightly. A second rescue boat pulled up carrying 2 more uniformed officers who jumped out and yanked Tuna's father to a standing position. He spit out the sock and said, I want a lawyer. You got a name, mister? Asked one of the policemen. No comment. Homo sapiens, said Tuna, but a really lame specimen. She tossed the torch into the shallows, where it hissed and went cold. So now that's the last chapter, but you're probably wondering, but what happened to them next? And that is why authors add an epilogue. It's sort of like the story's over, but wait, what happened to them after that? So this tells you. Epilogue. Episode 103 of Expedition Survival was broadcast nearly 3 months after the crew departed the Everglades. Derek Badger's final appearance drew 17.2 million viewers worldwide, a cable television record for non-sports programming. The director and editors did a clever job of splicing the video clips into a believable story, the climax being Derek's 33-second struggle with Alice, who was, of course, portrayed as a random wild alligator instead of the old show business pro that she was. Derek's embarrassing encounters with the snapping turtle and the water snake were digitally improved to save him from looking like a total klutz. At the urging of the Untamed Channel's lawyers, who feared young viewers might try to imitate the stunt, Derek's ill-fated attempt to eat the Mastiff bat was cut entirely from the program. However, the scene would turn up later on the director's private DVD of Derek's worst bloopers, another smash hit at the crew's end-of-year bash. Jared Gordon watched the Everglades episode in the medical wing of the Miami-Dade County Jail, where he was faking stomach cramps in order to receive favored treatment. Imprisonment had been depressing, especially when his defense attorney advised him to take a guilty plea rather than risk the wrath of a judge and jury. Tuna's father hadn't yet made up his mind what to do, but in any case, the odds were slim that he'd be a free man before his 99th birthday. Meanwhile, the person responsible for his bleak predicament was grinning down at him from a jailhouse television, flashing the same bleached teeth that had been embedded so ferociously in his throat, leaving a pattern of niblet-sized scars. "Turn off that idiot!" Jared Gordon begged, but no one at the infirmary paid him any attention. Raven Stark TiVo'd, that's like recording it on a DVR in the old days, TiVo'd the Everglades broadcast in Derek's luxury motor coach, which she'd been driving all summer. Ever since the night Derek was found safe on the tree island, the bus was a sweet ride, and Raven, sporting her sombrero-sized sun hat, had decided to take the slow, scenic route back to California. She'd already visited Disney World, her mother's house in Fairhope, Alabama, the French Market in New Orleans, and the Great Smoky Mountains and Graceland, the famed estate of Elvis Presley. Still lay ahead the Grand Canyon, Pikes Peak, the Custer Battlefield, and Glacier National Park, where she hoped to see a wild grizzly. After everything that had happened, Raven felt she deserved a vacation. It was she who'd composed the glowing press release about Derek's starring role in the capture of a dangerous gunman and the rescue of 4 innocent persons. She had kindly made no mention of his daffy vampire delusion or of his biting Jarek Gordon's neck. It was Raven who'd set up the secret doctor's visit so that Derek could be tested for rabies, negative, and pumped full of antibiotics to combat the lingering infection from the bat wounds. It was also she who had arranged for Derek to be interviewed by Matt Lauer, David Letterman, Jimmy Kimmel, and even Dr. Oz. And it was she who'd persuaded the governor of Florida to present Derek with the Sunshine State Medallion of Distinction, which was shaped like a navel orange and not usually awarded to TV celebrities. The wave of media attention gave major ratings boost to The wave of media attention gave a major ratings boost to Expedition Survival. Consequently, no one, besides Derek himself, was more shocked than Raven when Derek's contract wasn't renewed. The show's executive producer, Jerry Germain, went on Entertainment Tonight to say, after the grueling Everglades ordeal, Mr. Badger would be taking some time off to recharge his batteries and explore other career opportunities. That was Hollywood code for getting fired. It was Derek's own fault. Hoping to cash in on his new hero status, he'd demanded an even more outrageous raise for his new contract, which Jerry Germain had been all too happy to reject. Brick Jeffers, the buff young outdoorsman from New Zealand, was grateful to work for half of Derek's salary. Raven had been bitter about Derek's dismissal until Jerry Germain called her on the road. She assumed he was going to yell at her for taking the motor coach, but instead, he offered her a line producer's position on the new, revamped edition of Expedition Survival. At first, she had said no, but then she Skyped with Brick Jeffers for 1 hour. He turned out to be charming, extremely good-looking, and he was at least 25 IQ points smarter than Derek Badger. So, Raven had accepted the job, and now Derek wasn't returning her calls. He was sulking on his yacht, the Sea Badger, moored off the Caribbean island of St. Bart's. That's where he watched the final appearance on Expedition Survival. He thought the program was suitably flattering, although his life-or-death fight with Jared Gordon would have made a much more spectacular ending than his wrestling match with Mickey Krays' pet gator. Unfortunately, the police helicopter pilot had forgotten to turn on the video camera, so there was no tape of Derek's real-life act of valor on the swamp island. Getting fired from the show had dented his oversized ego. He'd immediately filed a grievance with his TV union, Guild 154 of Mountaineers, Ice Truckers, and Survivalists, but he'd received no response. A couple of other networks wanted him to star in new reality programs, and he'd been pondering his options. He was leaning toward the Catastrophe Channel, which had offered him a sick pile of money to intentionally place himself in the path of oncoming hurricanes, typhoons, lava eruptions, wildfires, mudslides, avalanches, and tidal waves. Best of all, the show, titled Bring It On, would be shown during the same Thursday night time slot as Expedition Survival, giving Derek an opportunity to humiliate young Brick Jeffers in the ratings contest and make Jerry Germain miserable. There was only one catch. The producers of Bring It On wanted Derek to perform his own stunts, including the opening parachute jump. Currently, he wasn't in prime physical shape, having gained 19 jiggly pounds during his sojourn in St. Bart's, a cruel calorie trap for lovers of brie cheese, soufflés, and chocolate mousse. Normally, Derek would have relied on Raven Stark to endure his childish whining, but she'd deserted him. So he sat alone in the Sea Badger's master cabin, engulfing his third cinnamon eclair of the evening, and watching his own breathless finale on Expedition Survival. As soon as the show ended, he dialed up the menu of his private video library and ordered all 3 Nightwing movies to be played one after another in high def. Through the port hatch, Derek spied a full moon, pale as the petals of a spider lily in the tropical sky. Life, he admitted to himself, could be a whole lot worse. Back in Florida, surgeons had successfully removed a bullet fragment from Link's right lung. Once he was out of the hospital, he bought another flip phone and called up Wahoo Kray, the kid who'd saved his life by tackling the shooter on the tree island.
"Thanks for what you done,"
Link said. "Sure."
"You ever want another airboat driving lesson, just let me know."
"It's a deal," said Wahoo. After all the media coverage about the dramatic events in the swamp, Link found himself a minor celebrity among his fellow gladesmen. That made him uncomfortable, since he wasn't a person who liked to socialize. On the night of Derek Badger's last show, Link had reluctantly agreed to attend an Expedition Survival screening party at Sickler's Jungle Outpost and Juice Bar. Sickler was in jolly spirits because the publicity about the lost survivalist and fugitive gunman had turned his cheesy roadside shop into a hotspot for curious tourists. Scammer that he was, Sickler had acquired a large poster of Derek Badger and forged the star's autograph on the bottom and tacked it to the wall beside the cash register. He'd also strung the weather-beaten mount of Old Sleepy, that's that alligator, stuffed alligator, from the ceiling beams, telling customers it was the very same alligator Derek had wrestled on the TV program and that it had drowned after he battled it to exhaustion. Sickler's souvenir business was booming, with eager suckers lining up to purchase overpriced coconut carvings, polyester rattlesnake skins, and authentic, notice with the quotes it means not really, Seminole bead shirts that were actually made in Vietnam. The crowd at the store that night cheered throughout the broadcast of Expedition Survival, the loudest applause erupting when Sickler's name appeared among the credits as a location consultant, whatever that was. Link himself wasn't particularly enchanted by the television show and grew bored with the repeated slow-motion replays of Derek Badger being tossed like a rodeo cowboy by the gator. 10 minutes before the big ending, Link snuck out Sickler's back door and went home to tinker with his airboat, which he'd recently named Lucille, in honor of the kind-hearted girl with the mean father like his own. Eventually, Link became a tour guide at the Mikosuke Reservation, and he never took his boat on another TV job. Wahoo Kray watched Derek's last episode at home. His mother had returned at long last from China and naturally did not believe Mickey's version of how he'd lost his big toe. However, Susan Kray had been pleasantly surprised to learn that the house mortgage had been paid up, thanks to Mickey and Wahoo's earnings from Expedition Survival. She'd been even happier to see that her husband had completely recovered from his iguana concussion and was no longer suffering with headaches or double vision. Despite his damaged foot, Mickey had resumed work soon after surgery, hobbling around the backyard pens, tending to his animals. Beulah the python had made the mistake of trying to chomp him again and gotten her teeth stuck in his cast. That night, the night that Derek Badger's Everglades adventure was broadcast, the Kray family sat down with a large bowl of buttered popcorn in front of the television. Wahoo thought the program turned out pretty tame, compared with what had really gone down in the swamp. Still, he was impressed by how the video editors had stitched the different scenes together in an entertaining way, including a shaky tree climbing sequence they'd salvaged from Derek's broken helmet cam. Mickey Kray didn't have much to say about the show, except that Alice had performed like a champ. Susan Kray thought the whole thing was overhyped and hokey. The first phone call came from Julie, Wahoo's sister. "Let's hear your review," he said. The show was okay. That Derek guy, though, he's still a tool. He's not so bad, Jewel. I'm just glad you and Pop finally got your money. Thanks to you, Wahoo said. Jerry Germain had at first refused to give the Krays the agreed-upon Wrangler fee, claiming their involvement with Tuna Gordon and her trigger-happy father had disrupted the show's production, endangered the crew, and cost the company thousands of dollars. The next day, Julie Kray had placed a phone call to Mr. Germain, threatening to sue both him and the Untamed channel for gross negligence by failing to provide safe working conditions on the set of Expedition Survival. She'd noted that her father's traumatic foot injury had reduced his agility when handling large reptiles and other unpredictable creatures, which made his job more dangerous and even life-threatening. For extra ammunition, Julie Kray had also listed several obscure wildlife regulations that Expedition Survival had ignored, information that she volunteered to share with the prosecutor's office in Miami. Jerry Germain backed down in a heartbeat. He told Julie Kray that he'd be happy to pay Wahoo and Mickey the full contract amount for their services, and also take care of Mickey's medical bills, which amounted to $13,000. It was Wahoo's belief that his sister had a bright future in the legal profession. At the end of his conversation with Julie, Jerry Germain had a brainstorm. Would Mickey consider a full-time role as Brick Jeffers' Wrangler sidekick on the new, made-over version of Expedition Survival? Julie passed the offer along to her father, who responded with 2 words: Bleep no! The next phone call after the show came from Tuna in Chicago, where she'd gone to join her mother. I saw my name in the credits, she exclaimed. Tuna J. Gordon, taxonomist. You're a rock star, Wahoo said. How about you, Wahoo Cray, first assistant wildlife wrangler? Okay, we're both rock stars. Wahoo's parents had given him a cell phone as a birthday gift. He and Tuna had been texting regularly, he with one thumb, until Jocko, the bratty howler monkey, plucked the device from Wahoo's jeans and beat it to smithereens with a banyan branch. Since then, Wahoo and Tuna had spoken only a few times when she'd called him on the Krays house phone. How's your grandmother? He asked. She's hanging in there, thanks to Mom. We're all hanging in. And how's Floyd dealing with the move? He's a hamster, dude. Every day's a good day. Wahoo was curious to know if there was any wildlife to be classified in Chicago. Autumn is overrated, Tuna said. It's already too cold for butterflies. The last month I logged a Vanessa Atalanta, which is a red admiral. He was just flying around Grant Park having a big old time. Guess what I saw yesterday in one of our palm trees? Not an iguana. Oh yeah, Wahoo said, a serious iguana. Tuna chortled. Did you show your dad? Absolutely not. Smart call. She told Wahoo about her grandmother's neighborhood on the city's north side, which was overrun with obese and fearless raccoons. They love chimneys, she said, otherwise known as condominiums. Wahoo laughed, and he remembered how funny Tuna could be. He missed her, but he was glad she was safe, living in a place where she didn't have to hide in her room at night with the door locked. Daddy might plead guilty, she said. That's good news. She and Wahoo had sometimes talked about hanging out together at the Miami courthouse while the case against her father was being heard. In truth, neither one of them was looking forward to testifying while Jared Gordon sat only a few feet away, glaring murderously. It would be best if there was no need for a trial. Selfishly, though, Wahoo felt disappointed that he might not get to see Tuna. So, you don't know when you'll be back in Florida? At Christmas break for sure, she said. Mom promised. Really? Maybe even sooner. Cool, he said. We'll go catch some critters. I'd like that, Lance. Me too, Lucille. And that's the end of Chomp. And if you did like Chomp, there are a lot of other books by this author, Carl Hyacin, and one of them is called Squirm. There's another called Hoot. They tend to have these names and a lot of animals. So anyway, this was a really fun read aloud for me. I hope you enjoyed it. And hey, that's it. Bye-bye.